housekeeping rules. I know we have been in this Zoom rooms for about, after this pandemic, for about 1.5 years now. So everybody knows this, but just spare us some moments to go through some couple of basic housekeeping rules. So we encourage you to participate and keep this session as engaging as possible. So turn your camera on and make a use of the chat box feature that's available in the Zoom. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll make sure to pass them on to our speaker here. And this session is being recorded. So if due to any reason you're not being able to watch the complete session or you have to jump off midway, no worries, you will be getting the recording of the entire session delivered to your email. And as I mentioned, write us in the chat. We are always looking forward to hearing your thoughts, opinions on all the topics. And if you're feeling a little bit of shy and if you want to remain anonymous, you can DM me directly as well, and I'll take those questions and pass them on to our speaker. And did that even happen if it was not on social media? So make sure to take screenshots of this event and tag us at @Powerfly in all the social channels. So with that being said, this episode is brought in association with Autodesk. So make sure to visit our company's section page and type Autodesk and go to Autodesk's career page. You can know more about the company, the culture, and all the open roles that they have available. So make sure to visit the Autodesk page and check out all the roles that they're hiring for. All right, so with that being said, we move on to the big reveal. We have our amazing speaker with us in the room today who will be enlightening us with her nuggets of wisdom, and it's none other than Anchal Khatwani. So Anchal Khatwani is a software engineering manager at Autodesk. She leads a team of software development engineers, localization specialists, and interns. Anchal is a strong advocate for inclusive practices and nurturing a growth mindset. She's a passionate change maker and strongly believes in creating equal accessibility for underrepresented groups through intentional programming and events around professional development and community building. So welcome, Anchal. Welcome, Anchal. I know that was a brief introduction, but let me know more about your career journey and your life journey so far.
Thank you, Sanmaya. Thank you for having me on this session today and giving me this opportunity to talk about myself. So my career journey started, out of my curiosity with writing software code and applications. I was a bookworm and an introvert as a teenager. And trust me, seeing an action and reaction through software coding, it just made my life so much more interesting. Fast forward, I did my master's in technology from one of the renowned institutes, secured a position as an intern in a software company, worked there for a few years, moved country, job, and landed at Autodesk. And that was 14 years ago. So if there's one constant and an inbuilt strategy which has accelerated my career growth, I would say that's dedication and growth mindset. So I learned it the hard way that I should not settle at taking setbacks and failures at their face value. When I was young, with my positive mindset and optimism, I always thought whatever happens, happens for a reason. And the entire story behind that may be discovered at some point in time. And gradually, as time passed, I learned the strategy of proactively narrating myself the story of my learnings, of my setbacks. And this rather has been the essence of my career growth, apart from hard work and dedication, which I still believe in. And, not about career growth particularly, but it would be a dry introduction if I don't mention the meaning and learnings that I've gained out of volunteering my time with the Autodesk Women's Network Employee Resource Group at, in the company. And currently I play the role of a programming lead for the global ERG. But at the core, what really matters is creating an impact, paying it forward, and creating a sense of belonging for a community that deals with effects of underrepresentation. So that's all about myself. Thank you.
Love that, love that. And what an amazing journey it has been. So as you mentioned, you joined Autodesk about 13, 14 years ago, and, you've been climbing the ladders to success. So there were several moves associated with, where you are currently at your career today. So what is your framework for assessing every professional move? And, how do you assess the pros and cons of stepping up or choosing? How do you decide what decision to take?
I think it's a great question, and it's important for people to make informed choices and decisions they won't regret in future.
True.
And my thinking here has been on the lines as such, where when I was too happy to be at one place or not quite, in both cases I decided not to quit. When I had great opportunities to lead, or I was surrounded by talented people, I had lots of inspiration to soak in, I would let the positivity do the trick, and it was easy to go on, when the going got tougher at any point, I would ask myself, am I going to learn something new here? How uncomfortable do I feel here? And am I going to stretch myself evolving as a new person out of here? Is it going to contribute to my constructive growth? And do I need to try out different skills to navigate this situation? And what could those be? What are those exactly? What do they look like? Additionally, is this really the place I can be? And a place where I want to give back or pay forward to? So yeah, these usually have been my considerations assessing my career moves.
Absolutely. So drilling down on that, there's this huge notion of 5-year career plans and, thinking your way into the future. So what's your take on that? So do you believe, or do you recommend creating a 5-year career plan, or are you someone who goes, who recommends going with the flow and, taking decisions as they arrive?
Yeah, I'm definitely not the one who wings it as I go for it. It's important to create a 5-year plan. It's always a great idea. It helps you build that trajectory to just to set yourself in the right career path and plan your career moves accordingly. It depends on different people differently. Some people love to plan ahead 5 years, 10 years down the line. Some people find it so uncomfortable to plan even for 2 years down the lane. Despite the way one is wired, what helps is building a lot of resilience in those plans and having those communicated with your managers. As we grow, our exposure increases, and with the more we learn, there's a possibility of change in our plans. So building that resilience in plans is really important, and communicating those plans is also important. So at Autodesk, managers conduct career conversations on a very regular basis. So this helps individuals take ownership of their career plans, seek partnership from managers, and this sets them up for success. And some people find it tricky to communicate their 5-year plans, especially when it's quite different from the current role they're performing.
True.
And it really depends on the relationship that you have with your manager and the maturity of your manager. And hence, building a good relationship with your manager comes in handy in such situations. It not just helps you communicate your plans easily, but it also empowers them to look for opportunities for you which suit your skills and potential.
Absolutely. And, I really love the anecdote that, it's not the only part that, you visualize your 5-year goal. It's also as important to communicate that goal to maybe your superiors, your managers, the leadership circle, so that, they can also play their part in pushing you. By the way, I have another follow-up question to this. Often, folks who are, when we are in engineering and all these divisions, and folks in general, we have a trouble in, self-advocacy when it comes to talking about our, our achievements. We sometimes feel, am I being overboard, or, am I thinking, very hopefully, or, is it arrogant to self-advocate? So what would be your take on this? How do you showcase, your achievements to your managers or to your leadership circle, and how do you self-advocate for yourself without the fear of getting judged, or that internal fear that tells us, okay, have we done enough, or are we just thinking it in our heads? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the topics many of us struggle with. As a leader, I've seen some really good examples of self-advocacy, and I'd also like to share what helps me as a person advocating for myself. A lot of people spend years not advocating for their work at all. And as a result, odds creep in where they may not get the required or expected visibility, or what they desire, or not at a pace that's proportional to their desire even. On the contrary, there are individuals who do it really well. Well, there are also individuals who want it sooner than they deliver, and that's a different category altogether. But really, talking about something or asking for something is not bad at all, especially when you believe in yourself. And asking for something in many cultures is not a comfortable situation to be in. And it's not just a cultural thing, even. There are many aspects. We just kind of, underrepresentation is one of the causes. Imposter syndrome is one of the other causes.
Yeah.
You mentioned about fear, something in your mind. But we just need a twist to that thought by not making it about ourselves, but also about the other person on the receiving end. Instead of having people realizing it or expecting kind of, what's expected out of them, it would be really good for them to hear from you directly what you'd like to share or ask for. And one of the things that I recently learned from one of our VPs is to add more comfort to this process by writing it down. So if I want to advocate for something, and if I think that it's a far stretch for me, I'm really scared of it, or I don't believe in it yet myself, what really does the trick is to write it down, to impose it, and kind of, also feel comfortable under my skin after kind of, just seeing it for myself, speaking it out loud. And it also goes along with asking some of the questions that I've always asked myself, like, do I really need this? Is this an ask? So if there's an ask like a promotion, think about what this means, or what the real intent is deep down. Why is it important for you? And that helps you bring clarity and builds a confident circle of influence backed by data and facts, so to say. So again, just to summarize, always remember, against every person who does not advocate themselves or advocate for themselves, there's somebody who advocates for themselves really loud and clear, and we get the required visibility, and in some case, even a desirable outcome. So it's just about trying to practice and slowly kind of, building a muscle around it.
Absolutely. Just, taking baby steps at a moment and getting better at it. Absolutely love that. And you also mentioned about the imposter syndrome. So have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome, and do you have any tips on how to handle imposter syndrome when, there are career setbacks or, any negative events? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think this is something which is very common. And also based on my exposure and the amount of time I've been with the Autodesk Women's Network, I've seen a lot of people discuss this, bring this about. And yes, I've dealt with it. And I still do many a times. Thankfully, I've realized a way to deal with that, which works for myself, And like I said, there are many people out there, and we have known famous personalities who have come out in open and speak about their experiences with imposter syndrome. Michelle Obama, Sheryl Sandberg, Tom Hanks, Maya Angelou, they've all felt it, they've all talked about it. And it's interesting that, people face this at different points in time, triggered by different situations. So some people face it when they're struggling, when they face failures, setbacks, like you just mentioned, when they're new to something, that they are trying to take up, or ironically, when they are at the summit of their success or have accomplished something as well. And the causes are many, there are cultural inequities, there's institutional discrimination, there are the past hurtful experiences, systemic biases, and a lot more reasons that kind of, manifest into these feelings of fear, anxiety, self-doubt, or even lack of confidence. And in my situation, it took me a while to understand what I was feeling, and that it was due to imposter syndrome. And I came at a stage where I listened and acknowledged the story that my mind was telling me. And I was fortunate enough to get to the level of awareness, that my mind was telling me. Because really, there are people who end up being into a level of damage without even realizing or being aware of it, let alone kind of, getting help for it. And in these cases, I would kind of, I appreciate the employee resource groups that we have in the companies, and in a company like Autodesk, which invests a lot of time and energy into its ERGs. And these ERGs are extremely active. They provide a platform for employees to feel a sense of belonging, where they're able to see a lot of people, as role models, or people who are in a situation like them get involved into discussions and ways of navigating these situations. Even communities like Power to Fly, I think, they create a similar space by connecting people from all walks of nature, walks of life, and where people are able to see more people like themselves, situations, and progress to those next levels of constructivity, which is really important. And talking about next levels, what really helped me was externalizing this with people I was comfortable with. Sometimes just talking helps. For some people, or rather sometimes empowering others to support you also does the trick, because people really want to help you in many ways. And especially when these triggers are external or situational, when you seek for help and you allow people to share constructive feedback and recognition, it just helps to kind of, or rather help to boost the confidence even. It goes a long way. For some people, working with coaches or mentors who provide that holistic approach at their strengths, look at real life situations and recalibrate it for you also helps. Basically, you may be the best judge of, what works for you here, but what's important is to take action. And it's vital not to dwell in that stage of fear, self-doubt, and be stuck in that stage, pulling oneself down.
Absolutely.
Rather, acknowledge your mind's ability to watch out for you and appreciate your ability to listen to your mind, but do take the next steps. Because, fear is healthy and okay. Most of the times it's okay to have fear. Everyone has fear. An intern, a CEO, at all levels, people have fear, and it works constructively for them. But what's important, or rather, what's really important, like I just mentioned, is to identify what will take you to the next steps and take that action. Now, this is a very individualistic approach to dealing with imposter syndrome. And, just putting the responsibility mainly on individuals is limiting too. And I'm a people manager. And as leaders, especially when we know someone could be facing imposter syndrome, we could use some shared responsibility of creating an environment where underrepresented individuals or those with lack of confidence can show their full potential, feel recognized and valued. And it's not easy to deal with implicit and systemic biases. Instead, it's always a good idea to create an environment of transparency, balance, recognition, appreciation, and personal connections. So, creating a strong team focused on personal connection goes a long way to help individuals deal with imposter syndrome too.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
Love that, love that. And there were a lot of nuggets of wisdom there, but my favorite ones were just being mindful of fear and using fear as your guidance tool and not let it consume you and not let it drag you to the abyss. And yeah, as you mentioned, just communicate, talk with people, your managers, your co-workers, and talking about that, that brings me to kind of my next question is basically, you mentioned a lot about communicating within your peers, your managers, and, within the workplace. So what would be your tips for somebody, who is not that forthcoming or, might be, who is not very good at communication to foster that workplace relationships, how to foster those workplace relationships so that, you can open up to them, and tell us more about how Autodesk does it, and how Autodesk promotes culture and an environment of inclusivity where everyone feels at ease to kind of share their problems, their positives, their negatives, their winnings and their challenges with everyone, and kind of grow through them.
I think Autodesk really believes in connections, having people bring their authentic selves to work, which is really critical to kind of creating a diverse workplace where we have a sense of belonging. And like I just mentioned, just having those people connections, communicating, it just goes a long way to kind of build those relationships. And it's not just about communication, tailoring your communication differently based on your audience as well. And it's a skill that one learns with practice. When I speak about communication, it's also, just communicating is one thing, but communicating at the right time, at right level, with right people, looking at stakeholders, and empowering people for communication strategies. That's another thing as well. And one thing that has always helped is clarifying and setting expectations. So a lot of times people don't speak their minds out, and I think that's where it's important to get into different strategies to create an environment where everyone feels psychologically safe. And the onus of communication is not just on individual, but everyone else around them. When you're in a team, and you'd see a lot of times people may not speak their minds out on a specific topic, but when you ask people for opinions, one realizes that if there are 5 people in a room, there are always 5 different opinions. So just having people to communicate and have them speak their mind, the way they perceive information, expectation, and just getting clarification in team setting, it's all quite important, and it's the key to just build good relationships.
Absolutely love that. Just, speaking your minds out and, not let anything be unsaid so that, you don't overthink about that and, brew on something that was never meant by the other person. So you love that, piece of advice.
And just to add there, when you spoke about Autodesk, and I think I cannot let this go without sharing what Autodesk's cultural transformation looked like, because so Autodesk has, it had launched its culture code in 2018, which we are still kind of, using, fine tuning, and it's serving as that important base for using a common vocabulary, between
Sure.
people to kind of, hold each other accountable, just to kind of, look at the best behaviors to be practiced around. And I think there has been a lot of time investment in giving people this structure of templates, processes, and you know guidelines that people can follow in their teams. We call it sprints in our company. So people go through these sprints and they just kind of basically desensitize all of the information. We look at all of this information along with our teams, look at different use cases, case studies. If it's a topic on psychological safety, we would have a lot of there would be case studies on psychological, how to build psychological safety, what goes into building psychological safety, what are the challenges, um, how do we empower decision makers, and how do people demonstrate courage, and so on and so forth. So there are just a lot of things that we already get from the company that all employees kind of can follow as it is and speak the same vocabulary to just kind of practice um, same culture code, so to say.
Absolutely love that. And, I really love how the passion in your voice when you say about Autodesk and, the workplace environment. So it goes on to show how much you love your job there. All right. So moving on, talking about, you mentioned a bit about soft skills and how that impacts the professional development. So I have a layer to add to that. So, for folks who are in the Asian region where English is often not our first language, rather it's an acquired language. So many of the folks are not very, they are confident skills wise, but when it comes to communicating in English, that might be that becomes a caveat for them, and that often stops them from explaining and kind of coming with their full potential. So since you have moved and emigrated to a new country, and you have done stellarly in your career, so what would be your advice on folks to how to acquire those skills, how to communicate effectively, and which soft skills have helped you advance in your career as well?
Yeah, I think soft skills go a very long way in
Mhm.
professional development. And I wish I had focused on getting high GPA. When I was focusing on getting high GPAs merit, I had rather focused equally on learning some of these skills that I later learned on my job.
Mhm.
And I wish there was someone to tell me everything before I stepped into the real world. That it's not about the language that matters. It's about skills. And like I just mentioned, building relationships, which, or rather something that has really helped me in my career, or the skills that help me is, firstly, building relationships, because what that helps me is to see through people, know them a bit more, and it gave me the ability to perceive people with additional information and context, even from an emotional angle. So I perceive their side of the story a bit
Mhm.
more and quite differently. Also, when you perceive people as allies, it's always
Yeah,
fun to work on things together.
absolutely.
And the other thing, rather, that has always helped me is to focus on information, data, attention to details, facts, which has helped me create a smoother influence, or has given me an open mindset to additional perspectives and ideas, to get things done. And the third thing, yes, communication. But again, it's not about the language. It's about, getting things clarified at the right time, just effective skills of communicating, knowing what the other person wants or is trying to say, uh, being able to assess people around you, communicate, tailor the communication accordingly, and, just keep building the skill with practice.
Absolutely. Love that. And, since you mentioned about building relationships throughout your workplace and, through LinkedIn and other social media platforms as well. So tell us more about how can networking help us grow our careers? And for somebody who is joining the corporate world or, who is an absolute beginner into the tech world, how do you start to begin those networks? Because, often, once you are into the game, it's a relationship of give and take. You have something to offer, and the other person also gives something to you. But once you're really new to the community, you don't have anything to offer really, or as it seems to a newbie. So what would be your take, how to approach the networking game and the network, how to build relationships when you're new into the community? So
Yeah, I think this is a great question, because I've myself struggled kind of, networking when I was new in my industry as well. And for starters, I think networking is one of the main reasons for career moves or career advancements.
true.
A lot of people make career moves, whether internal to their company or external, based on their connections or networks that they've developed. And it just becomes so much easier, that way. And building a network, like you said, in this busy world, while it's difficult as people don't have a lot of time, um, it also becomes easier due to technology and connectivity. And for someone who's very new to the industry, networking can be just taken as a time investment to build connections. So start small, and gradually one needs to be a lot intentional about the connection one is, the various connections one is building over time. And it's good to determine proactively what one wants out of spending time in these networking engagements. And as I mentioned, building a network is not particularly easy. It requires a lot of deliberate effort. And by default, for various reasons, what happens is, to compensate for this difficulty, we surround ourselves with people like us. This is great, but so like Harbinia Ibarra, who was one of the ex-Harvard professors, once mentioned in one of our talks in the company, that building a diverse network is the key. And I say that again, it's not easy. When it comes to developing connections with people who are different, and especially for people who are new to the industry, just stay open to networking possibilities with people who are not like you. And that's important. People who are not in the same industry, people who don't look like you, people who are not of same gender, they're not into the same role, or not in the same, or not of the same ethnicity, and so on. So what I would say here is, just try to know a different person and target a lasting, meaningful conversation out of that opportunity, or out of that engagement. So very first few times, you would just want to have meaningful conversations with people, and that's all. That's all to target. And this is a good goal in itself to begin with. Once you're proud of building those connections, it's also important to reach the next level of networking, where you really form strong bonds out of giving and taking from that relationship. So try to connect with people, or rather try to connect with your connections who are, who you have developed in this little time. Have conversations to find out what they're excited about, what are the problems they are trying to solve for. And in return, also vulnerably share your high moments, what you're struggling with, what are you looking for. And it's also a good way to have meaningful conversations and building stronger bonds. And this is also how networking possibilities take shape of opportunities,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And, love that anecdote that you shared about, being vulnerable, because often, when it comes to professionally networking, or if that's even a word, because, networking is networking, what's professional and non-professional. So, often it's kept very transactional and it feels transactional. So because there's always a human on the other side, and we are like, it's a human connection after all. So what better way to connect with another human being than being vulnerable? And I believe that's the most overlooked part. People talk about everything but not being vulnerable, because I think that's the most that's the secret to most innate connections. Being vulnerable, you can connect with the other person very naturally, and that doesn't feel transactional as well. So I really love that part. All right, so moving on, since we're talking about early career professionals, or professionals who are joining the industry as newcomers, or who want to pivot into engineering, what for professionals who are looking to pivot into engineering, what transferable skills are key to thrive in the industry, and what's your primary advice for all the junior professionals out there, who want to build a career in engineering?
Yeah, I think so. What I would say is a tech role is a very interesting
Mhm.
role. It's much more than just doing your job or knowing a
Sure.
technology or a technical depth of a programming language, technology, or tools. And at the end of the day, to package this work, working in a team, effective communication, being open to feedback with a growth mindset are some key elements. So some of the transferable skills would be an attitude to learn and
Hmm.
stay up to date with fast moving information, which is really critical to a tech industry. Flexibility to changes and agile approach is also something that's valued a lot, or rather it's looked into for individuals. Working as a team player in true sense, where I mean, just because I spoke about agile approaches, um, that's where what there's an expectation that an individual works as a team player in true sense, where collaboration trumps competition.
Wow.
you know Attention to details and remaining open to internal teams and customer feedback are also some of the other skills that help individual kind of excel in agile environments where work is broken down into smaller chunks and delivered incrementally with frequent inspections and Kaizen mindset. Um, Many a times, what happens is team members or people working in the tech industry, they directly deal with customers, and being equipped for those conversations is an added bonus too. And one thing I forgot to mention, which is applicable for anyone making a career move, early graduates, or even interns, um, please invest on building good relationships. You may have heard this many a times from me already, but really ask as many questions as you can. Do not
Hmm.
be afraid to ask questions, as questions act as, or rather, asking questions act as a double-edged sword.
Hmm.
Um, you don't just get responses, but you make the other person feel good too.
Yeah.
Also, people are really looking forward to making new connections. So I would say just kind of take opportunity of this time when you're pivoting into a new industry, or if you're an early graduate or an intern. That's when you really learn the most by networking, asking around, building relationships, and learning the most during this phase.
Absolutely. Love that. And yeah, just love that anecdote about asking questions and, making the other person feel special. And so that, it's a good communication and conversation for both the folks involved. And talking about asking questions for all of our audience who is available here, please ask questions. We have another 20 minutes left in this chat, and we'd love to answer any of the questions that you might have. So drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to pass them on to Anchal. All right. So talking about early career professionals who want to make a move to, kind of the engineering domains, there's a huge debate on, which language should I learn first, or, which framework should I go after? So to end that debate once and for all, what's your take? Which language should somebody, or, which set of languages should somebody learn first to, make their pivot into tech smooth?
Well, I think I get a lot of such kind of questions really from early graduates, or people who really think that language is what's important. Again, my team works on an array of languages, on technologies, and there's not a single language which is more important than the other. Definitely, we have a lot of folks invested into Java, full stack development, but really, it's about learning, just building that aptitude or building that structure to learn a new language and ways to learn a new language, acquire new learnings. And that's more important. We should rather focus on that than, just worrying about what language helps, because, I think more than that, it later also depends on where you're working, your work environment, the need of the problem statement, the need of the company or the team that you're working in, what you're trying to solve for, and what's the best language to kind of, use for that. So a lot of times it's not about the language. A lot of people learn new skills as they go. And this is the beauty of the tech industry, that when you learn one of the programming languages of object-oriented set of languages, that's good enough for you to survive in the industry by hopping on a different set of programming language or close by languages and so on and so forth. So I don't think I have a good answer on which language to go for, because I see people excelling by learning all sorts of languages, or having an experience in all sorts of languages or technologies or tools that are used as well. So yeah, I think it's really important as to what you develop your mindset into and what you're really enjoying. That's the crux of the matter. And then you can pick and choose as you go as well.
Absolutely. Having that willingness to learn, and having that logical thinking brain rather than focusing and obsessing over, building a list and array of languages that I have learned. So yeah, basically having that willingness to learn. Okay, got it. All right. So moving on, as you rightly mentioned, engineering is an ever evolving field, right? So how we can make sure that we are up to date with all the latest tech languages, whatever new in the scene. So how have you've been into engineering for about 14 years. You've been 14 years at Autodesk. And so what's your secret of being updated on the latest trends that keep on happening across engineering?
I think it's simple. Constant learnings, trainings, get focused trainings on topics, technologies that serve as a good head start for you to be able to catch up with deeper learnings. So never shy away from learning something new. Stay connected with the community through forums. Don't hesitate to, take support of mobile apps or, free resources, LinkedIn learnings, whatever is available, to just fulfill your curiosity, to understand, if you've heard a term, just go out, try to explore more about it, try to talk to people, try to kind of, Stack Overflow is one of the best ways as well. A lot of time, we've given multiple tactics a shot, and such tricks have helped, basically, just being connected to different people, different platforms, which kind of serve that appetite to stay updated, subscribe to, technical journals, subscribe to newsletters, just to kind of, be aware of what's going on, what are the recent updates focused on. And if this does not work, have a buddy or arrange share out sessions on new topic. This goes a long way to kind of, strengthen learnings as well. So we follow a lot of buddy system in Autodesk, where if you want to learn something new, you pair up with people, you kind of learn together, because it's always fun and easier to learn together, when you have partners in crime.
Absolutely. And, it also forges that bonding, that workplace bonding as well, because, you're sharing your learning journey with someone. Absolutely love that. And we have a couple of questions in the chat. So first of all, I'll take this question from Jillian. As we know, it's been a scary time in tech. So, with massive layoffs and, the economic downturn. So what advice do you have for people who wish to break into the tech industry now in the face of the economy and the massive layoffs?
Yeah, I think while there are layoffs going on, companies like Autodesk are hiring as well. And there's no specific advice, I would say, but really kind of, just make sure that you are connected to the right type of resources to, you don't miss out on opportunities that come towards you. You have ways to connect to, company portals, recruiters, and make sure that, you have accessibility to those opportunities, because the opportunities are still a lot out there. And well, I've been trying to hire a position, and I was struggling with people applying for that for a good while till, so I think the problem is the other way around as well. It's, the companies are really looking for the right people to apply. And breaking into the industry now is no different. It's just kind of, just if you believe in yourself, if you have it in you, just go ahead and apply.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that answers your question, Jillian. Let me know if it does not.
All right. Thank you so much, Jillian, for that question. So moving on, Anchal, you mentioned a lot about, mentorship, having that folks in your network whom you can reach out to when you need advice. And those people could be in the same tier, in the same professional tier that you are, or that they could be, your managers or some superiors as well. So tell us more about how mentorship played a role in your career development. And do you have any tips on how to find mentors and how to connect with mentors as well?
Yeah, I think mentorship has played a very big role. And I was fortunate to have a mentor in my career early on, and I've greatly benefited from the perspective and the perspectives and learnings that sorry, I've accumulated, just through the meaningful conversations and discussions I've had with my mentors. And when you have a mentor or mentors like that, you have built an anchor to bounce ideas as you run into situations and navigate them with a holistic approach.
True.
The way I've usually connected with my mentors, or rather, just to answer your question on how to look for mentors or how to find mentors, there are different ways people find mentors. If you have a broad network, and if you find someone who you can connect with or who understands you, has a lot to offer, that's an opportunity I would not miss out for. If you have something that you really want to learn from that person, or if you think that you connect well with that person, I think people are really happy to oblige for all mentorship engagements, because mentorship as well is a double-edged sword. It's not just the mentee who learns out of the mentorship relationship, but the mentor as well takes back a lot from that relationship. Just to kind of have those discussions and um, get those different perspectives, different situations. It is a learning for both a mentor and a mentee. And the way I've usually connected with my mentors is by taking ownership of my conversations and learning. Again, I'd say the same thing. Be very intentional on what
Yeah.
one wants to derive out of this mentorship relationship. Be respectful of their time. Sometimes we end up forming good friendships with our mentors, and it's critical not to lose focus on learnings when you
Yeah.
engage in discussions and carve out time specifically for growth discussions. It's great to form those relationships, friendships, but you need to understand when to focus on you know your growth discussions, and how to just kind of build that mentorship relationship through other discussions at all, uh, as well. And lastly, I would say that mentorship is one kind of networking which has a close potential, or rather which has a potential of forming a very close allyship bond with the person, someone you can learn from and expect to stand behind you, and maybe also act as a sponsor. So
Sure.
yeah, mentorship relationship is something that I strongly recommend people to try out if they've not already kind of tried out, because it's really meaningful and a fulfilling relationship.
Absolutely. Love that. All right. So moving on for our next question, do you have any tips for addressing unconscious bias at work? And how should we navigate this conversation around our managers?
Yeah, actually, unconscious biases, happen at all levels. It's something that exists everywhere, and um, you know, the causes of unconscious biases are many. Sometimes it's it comes, or rather, it's because of you know what I would say. Um, it's very deep rooted. You face the biases based on different cultural inequities, different
True.
systemic barriers, and it also depends on so okay, let me firstly pull it back to how a human brain functions. So human brain has developed a lot of inferences in order to create a space that it identifies itself with, where it understands better based on some categorization, some stereotypes. And
Got it.
if there's this ladder of inference that gradually builds all the information for people as they grow up, something that we all build by collecting information, experiences, data, and we convert it into conclusions and beliefs over time. It's not easy to challenge people and have them to change their mindset over time. It needs a lot of effort to firstly see through these biases. And unless someone really cares for a person, who's projecting a bias by calling them in, people really go without realizing for ages.
Okay.
So the first step really is to call people in respectfully and making them aware of the situation. Having a non-emotional conversation and explaining to the person as to how you felt, and also the impact that it creates or it would generate. Maybe this bias not just impacts one singular person or situation, but multiple people in many situations. Be it with managers or colleagues, I think this is really an important step to navigate the situation. And at times, depending upon the people who are involved, it's not comfortable for everyone to just call them in, let alone call them out even.
Yeah.
And in such cases, I would say what I've seen helps is take support of your HR team, people's team, the employee relations team, make them aware of these situations, get to kind of, just get a second opinion on whether you're feeling a certain bias, whether, there's something behind it, and take support on how to address that conversation, how to go about that conversation, even sometimes, because it's not an easy conversation to have. A lot of people just get stuck into that phase where you see the disparities or you see the impacts of that bias through different ways, and it just pulls you down, just like imposter syndrome as well. You just stay
Yeah.
in that bubble of fear or anxiety, and then you keep seeing it again and again, and then it just creates those triggers. So having conversations ahead around those becomes much more difficult, and that's when it's really required to have some support. And the HR team in companies really help in these situations. Not just this, but if our employee relations team, HR team is aware of that, they can also think from the point of view of systemic um, barriers that they can, um, kind of fill in, the gaps that can be filled in, or sometimes to think from that perspective is also important. It may not be applicable at all levels and at all cases, and it's not to say that only um, the people's team is responsible for overcoming systemic barriers, but at least there would be good leads and suggestions to offer at that place.
True.
And I would really like to recommend a book which is breaking through bias, and which is by Andy um, Kramer and Al Harris, some of the expert speakers, attorneys who have written a lot of books on unconscious bias and ways to navigate those situations at workplaces. And I'm happy to share the website even. It would be really interesting to just go through that, look at the books that are available. And there's just a lot to kind of, get used to just by going through their blogs even. So, yeah.
Yeah. Love that. And, love the depth with which, you kind of covered this issue. And, we'll definitely share the name of the book and the link to that book absolutely in a post-event email that will go out. Thank you so much, Anchal, for definitely, covering this important and sensitive topic with so much depth. All right. So since we are at the last stretch of our session, so we will begin with our last segment, which is called Getting Real with Anchal. So let me just share my screen. Just give me just a moment. Yeah, let me know if you can see my screen. Yeah, all right. So these are going to be a couple of rapid fire, quick questions. So we'd love to know your thoughts on this. So yeah, the first question is, how would you describe the culture at Autodesk? Let us know your thoughts about that.
I think Autodesk has a very robust culture code. And so I say robust. It's a customer company that deeply cares for its customers. It equally cares for its employees too, and encourages everyone to bring their authentic selves to work. So I think this is how I would summarize Autodesk's culture for anyone who's new to Autodesk.
Love that. What's your favorite part about working at Autodesk?
Oh, like I just mentioned, the cultural transformation of Autodesk, where, beginning from 2018, when the culture code was launched. Again, Autodesk culture code has three main aspects, or rather three components. The first one is to become a customer company, which, to become a customer company by helping people imagine, design, and make a better world, and actualize three critical values across the organization: think, feel, and do. So there are a lot of behaviors that fall into these three categories. And lastly, operate as one Autodesk, which empowers decision makers and everyone to act authentically and demonstrate integrity and basically act as one company. Just break through silos of your teams and act as one Autodesk. So this has been one of the turning points for Autodesk, and this has been my favorite part about working at Autodesk as well.
I love that. All right. So moving on, what are your top tips for someone who is interviewing at Autodesk? And for all of our participants, Autodesk is hiring. So make sure to go to Autodesk page and see all the open opportunities there. So over to you, Anchal.
Yeah, so I think for someone who's interviewing, it's really important to be transparent and authentic because I think authenticity is something that's really valued. Some people shy away from sharing a lot of details sometimes, or they think that sharing their personal details could be limiting for the opportunity. So but that's really not the case, especially not in my world. And I would say being transparent and authentic is one of the things. When you're trying to project certain skills that you want to highlight, prepare examples on relevant skills that you want to talk about, and never miss an opportunity to ask question, even if it's a repeated one. Just ask a question, get a different perspective from different people, but please do ask a question.
Absolutely. Love that, Anchal. And thank you so much for speaking here today and, letting us know, sharing a part of your opinions and, brain with us today. So thank you so much for all these nuggets of wisdom. And we hope to host you again soon. And for all of our participants here, thank you so much for joining. And we will be sending you the recording of this session soon via your email. So thank you so much and have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Sanmaya, Paloma, and everyone for joining today and listening to me. Thank you. I wish we could cover more questions.
Thank you so much, Anchal.